Om Tavakatamritam Taptajivanam Kavibirititam Kalmashapaham Sharavanamangalam Shrimadatatam Bhuvingarnantiye Bhurida Janaha. The nectar of your words, the praise of poet-seers, elixir to parched souls, delight to listening ears. Cleanser of all sins is great and glorious. They who spread it far and wide on earth are most generous. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good evening, friends. Today we will continue with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And for those that are following along in the book, we are still on page 152. And last week, we were discussing about how bhaktas, or lovers of God, love to, quote, love the splendors of God. They like to speak of His glories. They like to think, oh, how great Thou art, how beautiful your creation is, and how wonderfully dressed the deity on the shrine is, and all these things. And Swami Ramakrishna said that those who love splendor themselves are fond of dwelling on God's splendors. So just for example, sometimes people say, oh, I like to go out into the, go out hiking. They like to go out and see nature, and it gives them peace. And so they like to think of God as being the creator of nature, and they find peace there. And for some, they've told me that's their church. They don't feel like they have a need to go to a temple or anything like that. Just being in with nature, one with nature, they feel that that gives them a sense of oneness with God. So there they are worshiping God's splendor as God's creation, or God's creation as one of God's splendors. So as we continue reading, Swami Krishna is now going to tell a story. He's talking to the Brahmo Samaj, and he's just going to tell a story, a reminiscent from his past. It'll be about Mathur Babu, who was a temple manager back in those days. And as a temple manager, he was also the son-in-law of Rani Rasmani, who had the Dakshineshwar temple built. So Mathur Babu was in charge of the managing of the temple, how the shrines were decorated, and all these things. And who the priests were, and all those things. So now Swami Krishna is saying, once a thief stole the jewels from the images in the temple of Radhakanta. Mathur Babu entered the temple and then said to the deity, "What a shame, O God! You couldn't save your own ornaments." So it's not uncommon for the deities to be decorated with rubies and all the jewels that we only dream about ever seeing in our lifetime, decorating these deities, and not just one, but many. And so, as a way of expressing one's love for God, you decorate the deity as decorative as possible. And you'll see that during our pujas also. We might have a very beautifully decorated deity. Can't afford to have all that jewelry, but you'll see maybe some shiny paper to represent a jewel or something, but then decorated with flowers and so forth. So Mathur Babu is lamenting to the Divine Mother, to the deity, that you could not even save your own ornaments. And Swami Ramakrishna had overheard that, and he said, the idea, I said to Mathur, does he who has Lakshmi for his handmaid and attendant ever lack any splendor? Those jewels may be precious to you, but to God they are no more than lumps of clay, no better than lumps of clay. So we give value to things that are beautiful, but as far as God is concerned, it's just a rock. And so then he scolds Mathur. He says, "Shame on you. You shouldn't have spoken so meanly. What riches can you give God to magnify his glory?" So there's a little bit scolding of Mathur that he's got some poor idea of the splendor of God, that God doesn't lack any splendor. Why would he worry about a few jewels missing? It's only we, as perhaps in this case, the money would have come from Mathur and his estate, or from devotees who have donated it, but for them that might have been of very significant value. But when you start telling God, "Oh God, you could not even protect your own ornaments," so Swami Krishna thought that was very improper to say to God, because God doesn't care about all the ornaments. We give value, not God, to those things. So what riches can you give God to magnify his glory? How much can you decorate God or imagine about God? God is what he is. So therefore I say, a man seeks the person in whom he finds joy. What need has he to ask where that person lives, the number of his houses, gardens, relatives, and servants, or the amount of his wealth? I forget everything when I see Narendra. So Narendra is the future Swami Vivekananda, and he was not wealthy. He was his family had been taken advantage of and was now kind of in a destitute situation. But he was a person of very noble character, very inspirational, and Sri Ramakrishna always felt a certain strength when he was around. So he did not worry, he was not always, Sri Ramakrishna always feed him, was always talking to him privately and giving him special spiritual instruction, giving him special attention, which embarrassed Narendra because he didn't think he was any better than anyone else. But Sri Ramakrishna saw his potential. But he never asked who your father is, who your relatives are, how much money do you have. So that was not important. Those might have been glories in the past, but what was more important was his virtuousness, his character. And so Sri Ramakrishna felt those inner qualities were more important than any outward qualities he might have. So I forget everything when I see Narendra. In other words, even when he was busy talking with other people, if Narendra came into the room, that would draw his attention. So then he would express his love and attention to Narendra. So never, even unwittingly, have I asked him where he lived, what his father's profession was, or the number of his brothers. So that just showed the level of love he had for Narendra, based on his character's attributes, not the fact that his father at one time was a wealthy lawyer and all that. So dive deep in the sweetness of God's bliss. What need have we of his infinite creation and unlimited glory? So Sri Ramakrishna is reminding us to dive deep in developing love for God. Not admiring and worshiping his glories is just one step to that. But he was trying to remind us that as we get closer to God, those splendors, those those glories, those powers, seem less significant. We may go out into the forest, we may find peace and solitude, and we may feel a certain sense of joy and feel that, yes, this is what it must feel like to be a lover of God, to have this kind of experience. But there's also another level where you feel closer to God that you actually want to serve God. You may want to be near God. So I would not be surprised if many environmentalists or so forth wanting to protect God's creation feel impelled by that sense of service to protect the environment or protect creation and that kind of thing. But even beyond that, as one develops more and more love for God, one will feel a closeness of friendship and kinship. And then all of a sudden, you are more interested in being with God or experiencing God as God is. And so you're paying less and less attention to the creation and the glory and all the splendors of God, His infinite nature, His infinite power. You're now getting closer, and then as it develops, and then your love deepens. So Sri Ramakrishna is trying to remind us to deepen our love for God, even though He may be infinite and all that, but that to Sri Ramakrishna is not important. He's trying to remind us, from our point of view, that we should deepen our love for God, even to the point where, as our love deepens, we will feel our attitude will change. We will feel like God's protector, as a mother might feel for their child, or as a lover might have, where two lovers feel like they are one. So then you feel like, that you are just part of God, that you are united with God. You don't feel separate from God. So then that sense of duality disappears. So that is all the path of a sincere lover of God. At that point, what God's glories are, what value are the items that you want to offer God, they don't have any more meaning. You only want to be with God and love God. So now the Master, Sri Ramakrishna, is singing a song to remind us, to intensify this idea. He says, "Dive deep, O mind, dive deep in the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. Go seek, O mind, go seek Vrindavan in your heart, where with his loving devotees, Sri Krishna sports eternally. Light up, O mind, light up true wisdom's shining lamp, and let it burn with steady flame, unceasingly within your heart. Who is it that steers your boat across the solid earth? It is your Guru, says Kabir. Meditate on his holy feet." So Kabir is the author of this poem, and in the worldly sense, it is the Guru who introduces you to God and then gives you instruction and the spiritual instructions you need to develop love for God and approach God, as I had mentioned. So Sri Ramakrishna continues, "It is also true that after the vision of God, the devotee desires to witness his Leela. After the destruction of Ravana at Rama's hand, Nikasha, Ravana's mother, began to run away for fear of her life. Lakshmana said to Rama, 'Revered brother, please explain this strange thing to me. This Nikasha is an old woman who has suffered a great deal from the loss of her many sons, and yet she is so afraid of losing her own life that she is taking to her heels. Rama bade her to come near, gave her assurance of safety, and asked her why she was running away. Nikasha answered, "O Rama, I am able to witness all this Leela of yours because I am still alive. I want to live longer so that I may see the many more things you will do on this earth." But everyone he is speaking to starts to laugh. Because there's a certain irony here, because as the mother of Ravana and many other children, she has watched them all die. No grief is expressed here, but she's running away to save her own life. But yet she replies to Rama that, well, I'm running away so that I may live longer to see more of your divine play. Leela means divine play. Well, either she was very highly endowed spiritually, that she could say that truthfully, or she was making an excuse to not be killed by Rama, Lord Rama. So I don't really know the answer to that question, but anyway, I will let you guys think about it. So now he's speaking to a gentleman in the audience, speaking to Shivanath. He says, "I like to see you. How can I live unless I see pure-souled devotees? I feel as if they had been my friends in a former incarnation." So sometimes this is taken literally, but it is a way of affectionately speaking about someone that you love, as far as India is concerned. So if you feel particularly close to someone, you might say, well, we must have been friends in a previous incarnation, or something like that. Not to be taken literally, but it's an expression of closeness. So he says, I feel as if we had been friends in a former incarnation. That doesn't mean literally, that just means that's the closeness that I feel. But then a Brahmo devotee asks, "Sir, do you believe in the reincarnation of the soul?" Now the master is replying, but it seems to be kind of apprehensive, his reply. He says, "Yes, they say there is something like that." Now here we have Ramakrishna speaking like this, but yet the doctrine of reincarnation is quite embedded in Hinduism. But here he's expressing some apprehension to say absolutely that there is reincarnation. So then he's saying, how can we understand the ways of God through our small intellects? So we say there's reincarnation because there seems to be evidence of it, and some very evolved souls have mentioned that there is something called reincarnation. But Sri Ramakrishna himself is quite spiritually evolved. And so he's saying, well, it's not quite like that. And so he's just reminding us that how can we understand the ways of God with our small intellects? Many people have spoken about reincarnation, therefore I cannot disbelieve it. And now he's going to tell a story, an episode in the Bhagavad Gita, or the Mahabharata. As Bhishma lay dying on his bed of arrows, the Pandava brothers and Krishna stood around him. Now Bhishma was a great warrior, but he fought on the opposite side of Krishna. Krishna was the charioteer on the Pandava brothers' side, who was a righteous battle, and they were, it was, the Pandava brothers understood that the kingdom had been stolen by Duryodhana, who was also a relative, but he basically stole the kingdom through game of dice and so forth. But Bhishma was basically the general for that army, for that army, because he felt indebted to Duryodhana. So, but he knew fully well that Sri Krishna was a divine incarnation, and that this divine incarnation was helping out the Pandava brothers to win this battle. But he was on the field, on the war field, and he was in tears. So as Bhishma lay dying on his bed of arrows, the Pandava brothers and Krishna stood around him. They saw tears flowing from the eyes of this great hero. Arjuna said to Krishna, "Friend, how surprising it is. Even such a man as our grandsire Bhishma, truthful, self-restrained, supremely wise, and one of the 8 Vasus, he's weeping through Maya at the hour of death." So Arjuna thought that Bhishma was shedding tears because he was about to die. But Sri Krishna asked Bhishma about it, and Bhishma replied, "O Krishna, you know very well that this is not the cause of my grief. I am thinking that there is no end to the Pandavas' suffering, though God himself is their charioteer. A thought like this makes me feel that I have understood nothing of the ways of God, and so I weep." So, yes, we say that things are a certain way as far as the world that we see. We don't really know what happens after, but yet God controls all of that. So reincarnation gives us a sense of comfort in a way. It's a comfort thought. If we can't accomplish something in this world, that perhaps we will in the next time around. But though we don't understand whether there really is reincarnation, Ramakrishna is trying to remind us that, yeah, we speak about these things, but we don't really know what God's plan is, or because God is infinite. There's no way of knowing. There may be, he says, there's something like that, but we don't really know what controls life and death and all those things. And Ramakrishna is really trying to remind us that rather than thinking that things will be better in the next life, that we should live our current life to the best of our ability and not live on some hope of something that we really don't understand, we have no control over. So that is why Ramakrishna would not commit to one thing or the other, because he really wants people to live their present life as fully as possible, not put off something just because they think, well, I don't feel like I have the energy to do this time, or you've been battered by so much suffering that you don't want to stand up any longer and fight. Because he's also encouraging Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita to stand up and fight and not be so indolent. So that's really the point of why Ramakrishna will not fully embrace this idea of reincarnation, because it really doesn't matter to him. He was not conscious of his own body or his own mind in that sense, so he did not feel that was important. it's not important. It's really not important to us. What's important is how we live today. So now the story, the gospel continues. It was about 8:30 when the evening worship began in the prayer hall. Soon the moon rose in the autumn sky and flooded the trees and creepers of the garden with its light. After the prayer, the devotees began to sing. Sri Ramakrishna was dancing, intoxicated with love of God. The Brahmo devotees danced around him to the accompaniment of drums and cymbals. And all appeared to be in a very joyous mood. The place echoed and re-echoed with God's holy name. When the music had stopped, Sri Ramakrishna prostrated himself on the ground and, making salutations to the Divine Mother again and again, said, Bhagavata, Bhakta, Bhagavan. So he often repeated these three words together. By Bhagavata, he was referring to the scriptures that describe and talk about God. Bhakta, the lovers of God, and Bhagavan, God himself. And he's basically saying that the scriptures, the lover of God, and God, they are all one. They're all part of the Divine Mother. So then he says, my salutations at the feet of the Gyanis, my salutations at the feet of the Bhaktas. I salute the Bhaktas who believe in God with form, and I salute in the Bhaktas who believe in God without form. I salute the knowers of Brahman of olden times, and my salutations at the feet of the modern knowers of Brahman, of the Brahmo Samaj. Then the master and the devotees enjoyed a supper of delicious dishes with Beni Madhav, their host, which Beni Madhav, their host, had provided. And that is the end of the day for them. So yes, whenever Ramakrishna would have deep spiritual discussions, almost always be followed by music, by dance, and then a hearty meal. And with that, I will conclude today's talk also. So I'll just go over a few announcements. Just remind you that tomorrow evening, Swami Brahmatmananda will be online only, though. There'll be a class on the Toward the Goals Supreme. There'll be a reading and discussion. And then on Thursday evening's class will be at 7 p.m. Friday evening, also at 7 p.m., will be a class here in the chapel, continuing series on the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. We'll be discussing M again, part 4. And for those who live in the Seattle area, this Saturday at 10 a.m., we have a Karma Yoga Day here. It'll be from 10 a.m. to about 1 p.m. So if you have some time, come, and there'll be a short discussion on the meaning of Karma Yoga, followed by some volunteer work. And this Sunday, there will be a Mother's Children and a talk at 10 a.m. Swami Satyamananda's topic is, what is I? This thing that we call I, what is that? And there will also be Ramnam this Sunday at 7 p.m. And for those that might be ignoring their email boxes or say, no, I'll look at that later, a email notification has been sent out that the next issue of Global Vedanta is available free for download from our website. So I encourage you to check that out and give it a read. And if you have any comments, questions, you can direct them to Swami Satyamananda. So thank you very much for attending, and I will conclude with a chant. Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampa Tritavigraham Vai Ishavataram Paramisamnityam Tvam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. We salute that Ramakrishna who is without blemish, eternal and infinite in forms, who has assumed human form out of compassion for the devotees, who is God incarnate, the Supreme Lord, and who is most worshipful. Om, peace, peace, peace to all beings.